Under a sky painted in bruised shades of violet and copper, Wyatt Holt rode slowly back toward his ranch. His stallion's hooves struck the earth in a rhythm that echoed loneliness, a rhythm too steady and unbroken for a man who once dreamed of laughter filling the long halls of his home. Wealth he had in abundance, land stretching farther than the eye could hold, cattle enough to keep him in comfort until death. But warmth, belonging, that soft tether of companionship had abandoned him years ago. The world thought him proud, even cold, but the truth was harsher. He was simply hollow. That hollowness pressed on his chest as he dismounted at the gates, his eyes sweeping across the ranch that looked grand to others and empty to him. He had hired a cook not because he craved company, but because he was tired of stale bread and bitter coffee. Or at least that was the story he told himself. When Alen Sky arrived, the world shifted in ways he did not anticipate. She came on foot, a small bundle tucked under her arm, her gaze steady yet distant. At 23, she carried the elegance of survival, each step grounded in resilience. Her hair fell long and dark against her shoulders, and though her face was striking, it was not beauty that unsettled him. It was the calm she carried, the quiet refusal to shrink under his stare. Most who entered his house looked around nervously, as if his wealth might devour them. She stepped inside with the presence of one entering sacred ground, deliberate and unhurried. He felt his chest tighten, though he quickly masked it with the gruff tone that had long kept others at a distance. "Kitchen's through there," he muttered, pointing. "Meals at sundown. That's all." His words were blunt, meant to draw a line. Yet when she inclined her head and moved toward the kitchen, her silence lingered like an aftertaste he could not name. Something about her silence unsettled him. It was not submission. It was not fear. It was something else entirely. The first night she cooked, the scent filled the house in ways unfamiliar. Instead of the flat, one-note aroma of beans and salted pork, there came the layered fragrance of herbs, smoke, and something wild he could not place. He sat at the long table, watching the steam rise from the plate she set before him. She did not linger to see if he liked it. She simply stepped back into the kitchen, humming under her breath. He took a bite and the flavor startled him. It was rich, layered, alive. He looked toward the doorway, half ready to call her back, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he ate in silence, though each mouthful carried a curiosity he could not quell. By the time the plate was clean, he was listening, not to the crackle of the fire, but to the faint sound of her footsteps moving softly across the wooden floor. In the days that followed, he found himself noting the small ways her presence altered the air of the ranch. She never asked questions of him, never intruded. Yet she laid fresh bread upon the table, kept the fire warm, and folded his coat near the hearth after storms rolled in from the west. These were small gestures, quiet things, yet they pierced him deeper than any wild declaration might have. He did not thank her. He did not know how. Instead, he found himself lingering near the kitchen door as if by accident, listening to the sound of her knife against the cutting board, or the low hum of a tune he did not know. But the outside world had its eyes on him, and whispers traveled fast across the dust. It did not take long for the townsfolk to talk. A native woman, living under the roof of a wealthy white rancher, unmarried, such a thing was bound to stir wagging tongues. When Wyatt rode into town for supplies, he felt their stares clinging like burrs. Sheriff Amos Crane, an old friend once, approached him outside the general store, voice low but edged with disapproval. "Wyatt," he said, "you know what folks are saying? You bring trouble on yourself with this kind of arrangement. They'll never let it sit quiet." Wyatt bristled, his pride flaring. He muttered something about hiring a cook being his own damn business, but the words rang hollow even to his ears. When he returned home, he caught Alen in the yard, tending to the small patch of herbs she had planted by the porch. She looked up at him with calm eyes, her hands still dusted with earth. He almost told her of the gossip, the warnings, but when he saw the serenity in her expression, he faltered. Instead, he barked something curt about keeping to the ranch, as though distance might shield them both from judgment. She nodded once, not in obedience, but in a kind of understanding that cut deeper than if she had argued. That night, the silence at the dinner table was heavier than any storm cloud. He told himself it was better this way, safer. Yet in his chest something ached. Then came the evening when the corral fence gave way. He worked long past dusk, hammer in hand, sweat stinging his eyes. The board slipped, the hammerhead striking the flesh of his palm. Blood welled quickly, bright against the fading light. He cursed under his breath, binding it clumsily with a strip of cloth. Alen appeared wordlessly at his side, her steps soft but unhesitating. Without a word, she took his hand, unwrapped his makeshift bandage, and cleaned the wound with steady fingers. He wanted to pull away to shield himself from the vulnerability her touch exposed, but her hands were firm, sure, and humming again with that low tune as she worked. He found himself still, his breath caught as if the very world had paused around them. When she finished, she tied the cloth neatly and met his gaze for the briefest moment. No words passed between them. None were needed. Yet the weight of that moment lingered long after she retreated back to the house. The days grew into weeks, and he began to notice the stories she wove, not through long speeches, but through fragments shared almost accidentally. A father lost to fever, a mother taken by hunger, a people scattered yet still rooted in memory. She did not dwell, did not seek pity. Her voice carried the weight of survival without bitterness. He listened, though he never admitted how each word carved into him. More and more he worked near the kitchen, under the pretense of fixing tools or mending tack, though the truth was simpler. He wanted to hear her voice, wanted to catch the lilt of her songs as dusk fell. And yet, despite the warmth growing between them, he could not cross the gulf. Shame still gnawed at him. Shame for wanting, shame for needing, shame for fearing what the world would say if he stepped fully into what his heart longed for. He told himself it was enough, this quiet companionship, these stolen fragments of comfort. But each night, when he lay alone in his grand silent house, the ache grew sharper, as though the walls themselves whispered of what he dared not claim. The breaking point came one restless night when horsemen rode up, their voices carrying sharp through the wind. They demanded answers, their words bitter with judgment. "What are you playing at, Holt?" one sneered. "Keeping her here like some secret? You disgrace yourself in the town." Their laughter was cruel, their eyes hard. Wyatt's pride flared hot. His mouth formed words of denial, words that would distance himself from her to protect his name. But before he could speak them, he caught sight of Alen in the doorway, her face calm, her bundle already packed. She did not cry, did not plead. She simply looked at him once, with eyes that saw straight through his armor, and turned away. He let her go. He stood frozen as she walked into the night, each step carrying her farther until only the sound of the wind remained. His men had long since ridden off, leaving him with silence thicker than grief. He sat at his table, staring at the untouched meal she had left, and for the first time, the weight of his wealth pressed down like a stone. His house had never felt so empty. Hours later, under the silver wash of moonlight, he mounted his horse. The night air was sharp, each breath cutting deep. He rode until he saw her, walking along the dirt road, her figure small against the vast stretch of land, her shadow stretched thin by the moon. He dismounted, his boots sinking into the dust, and for the first time in his life he knelt. His voice shook, stripped bare of pride. He did not ask her to cook. He did not ask her to return as before. He asked only for her presence, not as servant, not as helper, but as the heart he had long denied himself. Alen studied him, the silence between them thick, trembling. Then, slowly she smiled, a smile that carried both sorrow and hope, like dawn breaking after endless night. When they returned to the ranch, it was not as employer and cook but as two souls choosing to endure the whispers together. The town still talked, but their love spoke louder in its quietness than any declaration ever could. Wyatt, once defined by wealth and isolation, found gentleness he had thought lost. Alen, once wandering without anchor, found belonging. They built their days in small gestures, bread broken, fences mended, fire shared, and in those gestures they wove a life of dignity and quiet joy. And if you've ever carried the weight of loneliness, let this linger with you. Love does not always roar. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the turning of a hand, in the warmth of bread left waiting, in the smile of someone who sees you even when you try to hide. And when it does, it changes everything.